Hi guys, welcome to today's video. So we're going to go through my 2025 TBR. I have 25 books here to go through. I did a TBR for 2024 last year. I had 24 books and I only read 3 of those books. So that was awful. An awful attempt by me. That was really bad. But I feel like 2025 might be a bit better. I tried to come up with a better list this year. One of the main problems with my list from 2024 was most of the books I didn't actually own. So I just gave myself a list of like 24 books I needed to buy, and that's not very helpful in the slightest. And a lot of the books I did want to read, but they were a little scary for me to read and pick up, a little out of my comfort zone, and so I'd rather buy a book I'm excited to read than a book I'm scared to read, you know? It wasn't the best list on my part, but I think I've done a better job this year. I've picked a lot of books I obviously really want to read, some others that have been on my TBR for a while that I need to pick up. And yeah, I'm realistically not going to read all of these books. I mean, I would try my best to, but I think it'd be a little silly to believe I would actually read all of these. But I'm going to try and do a lot better than last year. Hopefully more than 50%. That seems like not that much, but looking back at only reading 3, that's actually terrible, and I need to plan it out better and actually incorporate these books into my TBRs and stuff. Anyways, we should just get into these books. Most of the books, like I said, I actually own. Some others I don't, but I'm planning to buy them soon, and they are books I really want to read. So yeah, we have a big mix of books here. So I also have a list on my computer, so I'll be looking over at that. First on the list, we have Circe by Madeline Miller. This is a Greek mythological retelling. I don't know which one it is, what the name of it is. I don't know anything about the original story. But like I've mentioned a few times on this channel, I really like Greek mythological retellings, although I'm not interested in the original stories. Well, I am because I like the retellings, but I'm more interested in a retelling. But I guess a lot of the original stories I've heard were in school, and I wasn't really that interested because it was in like a learning environment. I read the Song of Achilles probably 2 years ago now and really liked it. And it's by the same author, and I've heard amazing things about this book, so I really want to finally pick it up. Oh god, the writing is tiny. The Song of Achilles was a really heartbreaking... I've heard some people don't like this as much as the Song of Achilles and some people like it more. I'm hoping I like it more. I think I gave the Song of Achilles a 4 stars, so I didn't love it, but I did enjoy it, and I might like this even more. I don't know. We then have Legends and Lattes. This is a cozy mystery. I spoke about this in my book haul, so I won't go on too long, but like I said, I don't know when I'd actually pick this book up. Like, I do want to read it, but I don't know when I'd actually pick it up. It seems like a nice read, but also maybe a little boring. So I'm not like itching to pick it up, but I do want to read it, if that makes sense. So I want to put it on a list so that I actually do pick it up at some point. Some of the other books on this TBR, I have the same sentiment towards. Hopefully I pick this book up. We then have The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I also got this in my book haul. This is a historical fiction and it's very highly loved by a lot of people, and that's made me really want to read it. I have no idea what it's about. I've seen so many people be so emotional over this book and just other books by this author, so I want to be involved, but it's another book that I'm scared to pick up and I don't know when I actually would, so I want to put it on this list so I get to it at some point and not put it off for a long time. But I really want to read this book, but I'm scared. We then have My Brilliant Friend. So this is literary fiction. I'm not sure what the story is actually about. This book is a part of a series, and I have quite a few friends on my bookstagram that really love these books, especially this one. This is another one of those books where I don't know when I'd pick it up. I've had it for a year now and haven't reached for it, so I want to put it more on my radar and actually pick it up because I think I could really enjoy it. We then have Anne of Green Gables. So this is a classic. I actually did start this book about a year ago and I DNF'd it because I felt like it'd be more beneficial if I read it at a different time, if that makes sense. Like, I wasn't really reading it very quickly. I was reading it really slowly, and so I wanted to actually read it properly at a different time. And so I think it's finally time for me to pick this book back up. The TV series Anne with an E is based on this book series, and there are quite a few series and movies based around Anne of Green Gables, but Anne with an E is the show that I watched and I loved that show so much, so I really wanted to read the books. And the amount that I did read of this book, I was really enjoying it, but it was just a bit of a slow read for me, so I do really want to read it. And I just love the way Anne talks about life and her perspective. She's like a childlike wonder. She has an amazing imagination, and the way she talks about like little things makes you really appreciate them. It makes me want to like romanticize things more, and she just appreciates life and nature and people and friends so much that just encourages me to do the same thing. So I really do want to pick up this book, finish it, and then also pick up the other books in the series. This one is very similar. We have The Secret Garden. This is also a children's classic, a book I've wanted to read for a really long time. My mum has been telling me to read this book since as long as I can remember. And I don't really know a lot about the story. I kind of know general things, but people praise this book so highly. Obviously, it's a classic, and I really, really, really want to read it. It just seems like such a beautiful book. We then have New Animal. So this is literary fiction. I think this book is more of like a weird read, like it's uncomfortable, funny, moving, and I really want to read more weird books this year, if that makes sense. Like some, what's the right word? Like unhinged, odd reads, but that also have like some new perspectives on life that you can kind of gather from these books. And I think this will be one of them. This is a popular, I've heard a few things on this book. I did buy it about a year ago and I haven't picked it up, so like I said, I want to put this book on a list so I pick it up. It's also a shorter read, but with literary fiction I tend to read it a lot slower. Oh, the words are massive. I should be able to read this quickly. I'm very intrigued. These books really intrigue me and I never know if I'm going to like them or not. Yeah, I definitely want to read this in the new year. A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime by Monica Murphy. So I have so many books from this series and I've not read a single one of them. Mostly because I've heard so many bad things about this series that I've just not picked it up. I don't know why I bought all of them. I mean, the covers are really pretty, so I just got all of them, which was really silly on my part. But I need to finally read this book. This isn't the first book in the series, but I've heard bad things about the first book. So I thought I'd start with this one, which is the most popular, and see how I feel. If I don't like it, I'll probably get rid of the other books unless people feel strongly about the other books and think they're better or anything. But I really don't know how I'm going to feel about it. It is a romance that's set in a high school. I don't know. I'm not sure if I like that premise. I think there is also like spice in this book, which is a little weird when it's set in a high school. If the characters are 18, then it's not that weird. If they're under 18, I think this is set in England where the age of consent is 16 like Australia, but I still find it weird. It's also so big, but I do want to give it a go because I just don't know. When I did buy it, I thought I would really like it. Now I'm like, I don't know if I'd like it. Maybe I would have liked it more when I first bought it, but we'll have to see how I feel because these books have been sitting on my TBR for so long and I need to do something about them. Sorry, the lighting keeps changing. It's a cloudy day and the sun keeps popping in and out. We then have Hunt on Dark Waters, a book I'm really excited for. This is by Kate Robert, which she has the Neon Gods series, which is a popular romance series. And I just saw this randomly at the bookstore and I was like, ooh, this sounds really good. It's a fantasy romance. It's set at sea on a boat. There's a witch and a captain. I love witches so much, and I've also never read a fantasy that's like set at sea on a boat with like a captain. Like I've had fantasy books where there's been scenes set at sea, but not a lot. So I'm really intrigued to read that. And I also, like I said, I love witches. I think the dynamic will be really interesting. I don't really know anything about the magic. Oh, there's vampires. So yeah, I'm very intrigued. I love picking up books that I haven't heard anyone talk about. So I do really want to give this a go. I don't know if it's a part of a series. Oh, it is. Oh, okay. We then have Crave. So I've heard really good things about this series. It's a fantasy romance. I think it's a 3-book series. It might be longer. But it's also compared to Twilight, which I'm not really a big fan of Twilight. I've never watched it, but it's not really for me. I think I might have enjoyed it more when I was younger. Like I like the Vampire Diaries. Looking back, I don't really like it. But I feel like this might be like Twilight, but better. No offense. I don't think Twilight's bad, but I think this might be written better. Or maybe it's not. Maybe it is kind of Wattpad-y. I don't know. I have had people comment on videos and say it's really good. So I do want to give it a go. It is very long as well. Oh, there's vampires. I do want to read a book like this that's like compared to like Twilight and the Vampire Diaries, but when I'm older, and see how I feel about it. I think at the very least it could be a very fun read. We then have From Blood and Ash. This is part of a really long series, and all I've heard about this series is that the first books are really good and then it gets really bad, but a lot of people keep reading it regardless. So I've been so hesitant on whether I should actually pick it up or not, and then I finally did. And I just want to read it regardless. If I get to like the 4th book and I'm like, this is terrible, then oh well. Like, that'll be my fault, but I do want to experience the series. I also heard like there's like later books in the series that are like the exact same as previous books, but it follows a different point of view. And I'm like, that's so random. It feels like a money grab, to be honest. Like, you're reading the exact same thing but someone else's point of view. Is it really that much different, you know? Like, you can kind of gather what someone else's point of view is while reading the book. I don't know. But I know Ellen Catherine really liked the first book. So did Cassandra Reed's. So I really want to give it a go. I've also seen so much fan art, and oh my god, it's a bodyguard romance. I really want to read a bodyguard romance so bad. I have a few on this list, I think. But yeah, I have not read a bodyguard romance. I don't want to read the one so badly. We then have Butcher and Blackbird, which I also spoke about in my book haul. It's a romance book that follows serial killers. I think they murder like bad people who have done bad things, so it's kind of like justified. I've heard amazing things about this book, and so many people love the romance. So I really, really want to read it, and I will get to it in 2025 without a doubt. Without a doubt. Oh! Oopsie daisy. Let me straighten you up. Oh, also, what was I going to say? Oh, okay. It's different from like a normal, from a normal romance. So I think it'd be a bit of fun, you know, to switch things up a little. My words aren't working right now, but I think it'd be fun. Okay. And then next we have Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez, which I also spoke about in my book haul. I haven't read a book by this author and I really want to. This is the first book in her like 3-book romance series. I feel like this is the best place to start. So many people were reading Abby Jimenez this year and were loving her books, so I want to give her a go. And then for the books that I don't own, some of these are actually on Kindle Unlimited, and then others I'm planning to get at some point, like I said, and they are books I really want to read, so I will actually purchase them and not just put them off. But firstly we have Out on a Limb. So this book is by Hannah Bonham Young, I think is her name, and I've wanted to read a book by her for a really long time. I had Next of Kin on my TBR for a really long time, and when putting up this list I was like, oh, I should put a book by her, but then I felt like I should probably start with Out on a Limb. I don't know why I came to that conclusion. I think I've heard better things about Out on a Limb, and so many people love that romance book. Yeah, I've just heard really good things. I think there's also Accidental Pregnancy, which I've never read a book with that trope, but I'm really intrigued. I know some people hate that trope, but I don't think I'd really mind it. Like, I love kids in books, so I really want to read that book. We then have Assistant to the Villain, which is like a fantasy romance. I don't think the fantasy is very heavy though, maybe more on the romance side, and I think there's like a journey the characters go on, or like they try to figure out a mystery. It sounds really, really fun. It reminds me of the Villains and Virtues series, but maybe a bit more like cozy and less intense on the fantasy side. So I really want to pick that book up. I think there's also like little creatures and stuff. I know there's a frog that like talks with signs and stuff, which just sounds like a fun time. So I really want to pick that book up. We then have Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. So I really want to read a book by him. His books are more high fantasy, which I'm not used to, but I want to give them a go. People like speak so highly of him and his books. Katie's has read so many of his books, and I always want to pick him up when I see her reading one of his books. I think Mistborn, the series, is probably the best place to start from what I've seen. It is like one of his most popular series, so I really want to start that series. I also have Tress of the Emerald Sea by him, which is a newer release, and I've also heard amazing things. That book is like in a little series. It has Tress of the Emerald Sea and then Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, but I don't think it's like a proper series where people recommend reading Tress of the Emerald Sea first. And I've also heard amazing things. It looks so interesting. I think his like magic systems he comes up with are really, really cool. And just his worlds, like people, oh my god, people praise him. So I really want to read a book by him. In his mind, he's like the fantasy version of Stephen King. Even though Stephen King writes fantasy as well. I feel like people know him more for like his horror and thrillers, but anyways. We then have A Dowry of Blood. So this is by S.T. Gibson. I read An Education in Malice by her this year, and it's one of my favorite books. So I really want to read another book by her. This book kind of goes before An Education in Malice, but you don't have to read them in order. It's another vampire story with a romance. It's dark academia, has fantasy elements, and I really, really want to read another book by her, like I said, so I feel like that's the best place to start. Next we have A Dark and Drowning Tide. This is another dark academia book with a sapphic romance, academic rivals. I've heard really good things and it sounds really, really good, like I just said. So I really want to pick it up. But yeah, I think this book came out this year, so it's quite new. I do want to read more dark academia because from the few I've read, I've really enjoyed it. And usually the writing is really beautiful, so I definitely need to pick more up. We then have Interesting Facts About Space. This is by Emily Austen. So I read Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead by her about a year ago, and I love that book. It's one of my favorites. The way she talks about mental health issues and explores them through her characters. In my opinion, she does it really, really well. And I felt really connected to her character. I felt like I could relate. Like she actually understood what I went through. And obviously not everyone's going to feel like that. I've read other books that cover mental health and I felt like they didn't really cover it well in my opinion, but other people felt differently. So it's up to everyone. But I also recommend if you're going to pick that book up, read it when you're in a good headspace because it is a lot. It was also really funny and interesting. I hadn't read a book like that before, so I really want to read Interesting Facts About Space by her. It is, I think, similar to that book, and she has another one coming out soon, or it already came out. I think it's called We Could Be Rats, so I really need to pick up her books because it has been like over a year since I read that first book and I really enjoyed it, so I need to read more. Oh, okay, we then have Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher. So T. Kingfisher is actually quite a big author. I've seen so many people read her books. She's more of like a thriller, horror writer, I think. But Sword Heart is a fantasy. And I've heard really good things. It's the book by her that intrigues me the most. I think the sword in the book is sentient. It sounds really good. And it's also a shorter book, so I really want to give it a go. I just also really want to read a book by this author. And I likely won't pick up a thriller or horror by this author, so I'd like to read a fantasy book that I've heard good things about. We then have 10,000 Stitches. So this is by Olivia Atwater. I read Half a Soul by this author, again, like a year ago, and I really, really liked it. It's one of my favorite books. And 10,000 Stitches comes after Half a Soul. It's like in this little series. Each book is like completed, so you don't have to read the following book, but you can, and I do want to continue on with her other books. I haven't heard amazing things about the other books. Katie is reading, loves her books, but I think she's not loved her other books as much as Half a Soul, but she has gone on to read more by her. So I feel like I should just give her other books a go. I had a really good time when reading Half a Soul, and I just love her writing. It feels very unique, so I want to read more books by her. A lot of these books are from authors I've read before and want to read more from, which I feel like I should do more. Because if I enjoyed one book by an author, I'm likely to enjoy another. So we next have Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, a book I've been wanting to read for so long. It is like a cozy, does that have fantasy? I'm not sure. It's like a mystery. We're following this character who I think she like works with flowers and stuff and herbs, and she's trying to uncover a mystery. I could be completely wrong. I think that's what it's about. I've heard so many people talk about this book. I should know what it's about at this point. But I've always wanted to pick it up since it first came out. Also, like, the cover is gorgeous. That's what's really intrigued me. And I've heard amazing things. So I really need to get to it. We then have Taming Wyverns and Other Beasts. So this is by A.K. Kajino, who wrote the Villains and Virtues series, my favourite series from the year. I've wanted to read other books by her as well, other books from like other series. And this book comes out next year. It was supposed to come out in February, I think, but I just saw a post today that it's been postponed, so I don't know when it'll come out. Hopefully within next year, but I do want to get to it. And then lastly, we have The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. So this is a bodyguard romance, of course. Like I said, I want to read a bodyguard romance, and I've wanted to read this book for such a long time. I think the roles actually switched in this book, so the female main character is the bodyguard. I've heard amazing things. People really love Catherine Center's books, so I really want to pick it up. I've also heard great things about her literary fiction books, so if I really enjoy this book, I would love to pick up a literary fiction book by her. But yeah, those are all the books on my 2025 TBR. If you guys have read any of these books, let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Maybe I should do reading vlogs throughout the year where I read books off this TBR, and just every month I'm going to actually put books from this list into my TBR like I should have done this year. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I have a book Instagram and a book TikTok you can follow if you like. I post on there all the time. I also have a Goodreads link down below. You can add me and I'll add you back. Again, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Bye!